Looking to purchase the new Canyon Strive-On CFR Underdog? In today's video, we're going to dive deep into its specs and pricing so you can make a better informed decision on your new purchase. Welcome to Frankie's eMTB channel. Hope you all are having a great week so far. I was very curious about this bike because of its attractive price at $5,799 USD. It's especially attractive with that Bosch motor. So I'm guessing you are here for the same reason, but is this eMTB fully ready to rip out of the box, or do we have to upgrade some of its components? So let's dive right in and talk about this bike. Before we begin, we're only talking value and spec and not ride quality or performance. Hopefully in the future, I'll be able to test ride this bike and I'll give you my first impressions and how I feel about this bike. But before then, let's talk value. So logging on to Canyon's website, the Strive-On CFR. Let's see the bikes. Pretty cool video and pretty awesome bike, honestly. I took a little peek at this bike. It looks pretty awesome. So we have two tiers, the Strive-On CFR Limited and the Strive-On CFR Underdog. And for today's video, we are going to talk about the Strive-On CFR Underdog because it is a base tier value bike, and a lot of people are on this channel because we want to see what the base tier is all about and do we need component upgrades and see what this bike is all about. $5,799. This is a pretty attractive price, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys are also attracted. And it is a Bosch motor. Let's look at some of the specs of this bike. Let's look at the components, and let's look at all components, spare parts. Probably not the easiest thing. Component headline, highlight. A little bit tough to navigate, but let's take a look at some of the basic stuff about this bike. All right, so you got component geometry. Let's start with component geometry, and let's start looking at what this bike is all about. Wheel size, it is a mullet 27.9er, which is pretty cool. Some people prefer the 29s, especially people who love riding fast. They love 29 front and rear. The battery capacity lists 750 watt hour or 625 watt hour. I'm thinking that this is a 625 instead of a 700. Let's see what happens when I put it into the cart, if it will tell me. Yeah, right here it says it's a 625 watt hour battery. So it is a 625 watt hour battery with the Bosch Performance CX motor at 85 newton-meters of torque. Really good, solid motor and a nice 625 watt hour battery. Those are really good, an A in my book. A little bit better than the Turbo Levo Brose motor. I just like how it gives you a lot of boost. Makes you feel that punch. It is a carbon frame, Bosch Motor CX. Doesn't seem to have a flip ship for geometry. So if you want to convert this bike into a 29er, full 29er, probably it's not going to allow you to do it. What else is with this bike? What's the travel on this bike? Travel on this bike should be, let's see. Okay, so the rear suspension travel is 160 and the front is 170 millimeters, which is a full-on enduro electric mountain bike. So now let's take a look at the basic geometry. If you're purchasing a bike, looking at geometry, a few key specs that I like to look at are reach, chainstay, head tube angle, and the wheelbase. Those four things are to determine the type of ride that you can get from a bike. For example, reach, I like my reach to be 450, and at a 450 reach, It makes me feel like I can, stand upright a little bit more, and I can be a little bit more playful instead of hunched over with a longer reach. Chainstay, the shorter the chainstay, the poppier it is. The longer the chainstay, the more stable the bike is. Those are the type of things, as well as head tube angle. The slacker the head tube angle, the more it's built for downhill. The steeper the head tube angle, is built more for technical riding. If you live in an area with a lot of switchbacks and stuff, you want your bike to have a little bit more maneuverability, so that head tube angle determines that. So let's look at what this bike offers in terms of geometry. I'm about 5'8", so I ride a medium. So if we look at this medium bike, reach, let's see, where is reach? 475 millimeters for the reach. 475 millimeter is pretty long for a medium, so we can tell this 475 millimeter is built for riding more hunched position. So this bike is more or less for aggressive downhill, more in that downhill spectrum, instead of riding a little bit more upright where you can lots of maneuverability. This bike, I can tell with that reach, wants to point straight and forward and down some chunky stuff. I can tell you from that. Chainstay 445 across the board. 445 is not long and it is not short. Long would be somewhere in the range of like 460. 450 is where usually most of the enduro bikes lie. So this is a little bit shorter in terms of the short space for a enduro bike. So it wants to keep, I would say it wants to keep a little bit of that liveliness. So it went down to 445 to compensate for the longer reach. So you're going to be a little bit hunched over, but then when you do want to apply more maneuverability or pop that rear wheel in jumps and stuff, that shorter chainstay, a little bit shorter, not really short, but that little bit short chainstay, that 445 compensates for that. Wheelbase, 1,274. Good size enduro bike. Not the longest, but a good size enduro height. Head tube angle, 63.5 degree, very slack, so it's gonna be very stable at higher speeds, and it's gonna be very stable at the steeper stuff. SoCal riders, need a mechanic to work on your bike? Give my boy CJ at Faust Tuning Works a DM at _inside FTW on Instagram for an appointment. He's hands down the best mechanic I know, works on bikes, trucks, RC cars, and he also welds. So if you need anything done, DM CJ on Instagram at _inside FTW. Let him know Frankie sent you, and you'll get $50 off of your first service. So let's get into the value portion and let's take a look at the components section. Let's look at all the components. I wish they had a bigger section so I can look at all this stuff. So looking at the rear shock, it is a Fox FloatX Evo, and it's not the best rear shock for a $5,700 bike, especially a direct-to-consumer brand. Like the Fox FloatX has different tiers. This one is probably the tier that is just, yes, Fox FloatX. If you look at that, it only has the rebound knob and it doesn't have the compression knob. However, there are ways around it. You can get a compression knob for a cheap price, and you can do the compression adjustability. But as a stock shock, this should be at $5,700, especially for consumer direct. It should be a Performance Elite, in my opinion. So I give this component a C. And moving on to the fork is a Fox 38 Rhythm grip. Again, why do you guys spec a Fox 38 Rhythm grip? This should have been a performance, lighter materials for the performance. So when you do decide to do an upgrade, you can upgrade the damper from a grip 1 to a grip 2 damper, and then that would change the dynamics of the fork. But Fox 38 rhythm grip, I give that a C, especially for $5,799. Seeing what Ari is doing with their bikes and their builds, it's hard for me to rate this with a better score. Brakes on these are SRAM DB8s. I've heard some good stuff about the DB8s. It's mineral oil instead of a DOT fluid. A lot of people don't like the DOT stuff, but it is a relatively good entry-level brakes. So I would give this rating a B. Let's check out the drivetrain. Drivetrain is the rear derailleur, the shifter, the cassette. They're all the Shimano DeRoy M6100 series, which is the Shimano DeRoy entry-level kit. I would say it's sufficient enough for an entry-level kit, but for me, again, seeing what Ari is doing with their builds, I think Canyon should have done a better job. They at least should have spec'd an SLX series, or if they were saving a bit more on the fork and the shock, they could have bumped this up to an even XT at $5,799. I think they could have done it. So I give this, you know, it's not the biggest deal, especially for the drivetrain here for an e-bike. I mean, yes, to some people it is a big deal, but you can still go out and ride the Shimano DeRoy M6100 for quite a while. So I'll give this a B grade. All right, moving on to the wheels. It is a TT Swiss H1900 spline hybrid. It is the hybrid 2927. Solid wheels. Like I said, I love DT Swiss. They have the ratchet system. It's 30 millimeters internal width. Great wheel. Hard to go wrong with DT Swiss. So I give that an A rating. Looking at the tires, they are Maxxis DHR 2s for the rear and DHR and an Assegai for the front, but they do not specify exactly what casing it is. So we can try and find a picture and see what it is. But usually pictures don't, that looks, okay, the picture looks like it's an EXO Plus in the front and a DD in the rear, which on an enduro bike, I think it should be DD front, DD rear, because we're not even concerned with weight, and we're concerned about how much you can shred out of the box. And having a DD front and a DD rear with all the geometry and the specs given on this bike, I think it should just be DD front and rear and not EXO Plus in the front. So maybe I can give that a B. At least they got the DD in the rear. All right. So let's see, we've talked about the fork, the shocks, we talked about the brakes, we talked about the wheels. Let's see, anything else that we feel like the components that we need to discuss. What type of dropper seat post they have? Seat post, Iridium dropper. Honestly, I have not heard of Iridium dropper. The Iridium dropper seat post offers 150, 200 on the fly. Pretty cool, I guess. If it's on the fly, you can adjust 150 to 200 millimeter. That's just pretty cool. I mean, I have to look into it. In terms of all the specs, when we come down to $5,799, I think we're looking at a B- for these specs. Given that at $5,799, if we look at a brand like Ari, who's also consumer direct, they were offering some high-end stuff at $5,999. $5,799 is more affordable, but the shreddability of this bike out of the box is more like a B, because if we're talking about the 38 Rhythm and we're talking about the Fox Floatex, you're definitely gonna have to upgrade those two components for you to maximize the full potential of this bike. Pros about this bike. The best thing about this bike is the motor, the frame, and the battery. Motor is the Bosch Performance CX, battery 625 watt hours, carbon frame. Those are the three best things to come out of this bike. And the bike is exceptionally beautiful, sleek lines, very awesome. I think there's some very interesting geometry coming out of this bike. 475 reach with a 445 chainstay, which is very interesting. Offsets a little bit, and it's a relatively short chainstay for a 160 enduro bike. That could prove to this bike to be playful at the same time feeling planted and feeling like you're in control. When I first saw a picture of this bike, it sort of reminds me of the YT Decoy, which is still a very sexy bike. The YT Decoy has been one of those proven bikes to be still like relevant today. This sort of looks like an updated version of the YT Decoy. You know, both Canyon and YT are direct to consumer. So Canyon came out with this bike to kind of jump ahead of the Decoy, because the Decoy is due for an update. But this does remind me of that Decoy, and it's very sexy looking bike, especially with the black color, the matte black. Yeah, it's very sexy. Look at that. Very cool. To fully maximize this bike, you'll need to upgrade the fork and the shocks. And the cheapest way that I think you can achieve this is by getting the Grip 2 damper upgrade kit. So that's probably like around 300 something bucks, and likely $100 for installation. But if you know how to do it yourself, you can save that $100. But that you're looking at running like a $400 upgrade to your fork, which to me I think is still a bit too much, because you know I've ridden the grip dampers. I like it's okay. It's not that you can't shred, but once you push the grip dampers to a limit, you're gonna feel like you want more out of your fork. Just knowing that you just paid $5,000 for a bike and you still want to upgrade a little bit more. That's why I put this bike down just a little bit. And it reminds me of my Turbo Levo 2, which I purchased at $5,600. But with that grip damper, I was like, oh man, I wish I had a little bit more. I wish I had a little bit more of control on my compression. I wish I had a little bit more control on my rebound. And I was able to find a cheap way to transform the fork's dynamics with a spring. You could probably pull that off with the 38. I think alternatively, you can go for a DVO package. DVO package by far is one of the most underrated packages. I keep talking about it on this channel because once I put the DVO on, I was like, what's everybody fussing about with Fox and RockShox? DVO is sufficient and it feels really good. So get that DVO at a cheaper price point with the same amount of tweaks and the same amount of feel as the RockShox or a Fox. I guarantee you'll love it. Brands like Ari and Intense are going with the DVO build for a reason. Give DVO a shot. I'm pretty sure you're gonna enjoy it. Overall, I think this bike is a great option for everybody who's looking to purchase this bike. $5,799 is not too bad for what you're getting. Full carbon bike, Bosch motor, 625 watt hours of battery, good enough components to ride, but to maximize its full potential, you're still gonna need some upgrades. Out of the box shreddability is a B grade, like a C plus to B minus. I'm putting it right there. And again, to fully realize its potential, you'll need to add some upgrades to this bike. That is all for today's video. Use my affiliate links to purchase all the components talked about in this video. All purchases made through my affiliate links will directly help this channel. Hope you all enjoyed this one. Hope you found this video useful. Let me know down in the comments if you like this type of format or not. And with that, we'll see you all in the next one. As always, stay electric. Peace.